Today's story is about a man well known to the whole world. In this story, you will enjoy some heartwarming times, some funny times, and some very serious times. You'll get a little insight into the boy, the young man, his first steps into manhood, and the hardened leader that is Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu, a man that quite possibly has an unmatched passion for his country and his people. This is a story of innocence, humor, gritty determination, and complete loyalty. But just before we get stuck into this captivating tale, we very quickly need to give a shout out to Dr. Stephen G. Erickson for creating the most amazing technology of recent times that has already helped hordes of people realize their dreams. Based on studies from NASA and Stanford University, this is no gimmick. So do yourself a huge favor and check it out for yourself. We have included a link for you to follow in the description below. Right, with that said, let's get into it. The late autumn air of 1949 carried a quiet chill through the bustling streets of Tel Aviv. In a modest, sunlit apartment, the cries of a newborn echoed, announcing the arrival of Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi to those closest to him. His father, Benzion Netanyahu, a formidable figure with a gaze that could cut through stone, looked at his son with a mixture of hope and burden. This boy was born into a land of promise, but one drenched in the blood and tears of countless generations. His mother Sela held him close, whispering soft lullabies that seemed to promise protection against a world already set to judge him. Bibi grew up with stories of valor and struggle floating through their home. The walls were lined with books and photographs of historical figures, Zionist leaders, philosophers, warriors, all seeming to watch over him as he learned to walk, talk, and most importantly, argue. By the time he was 6, he could hold his own in conversations about the future of Israel, much to the amusement and admiration of many of his father's friends and colleagues. At dinner, he would mimic his father's fiery hand gestures, declaring in a high-pitched voice that even if he were small, he'd defend Israel against all its enemies. His parents would laugh, but they knew his words were more than just child's play. Something in his eyes told them he believed in every word he was saying. Yet there was a softer side to young Bibi, a side few ever saw. One afternoon, he dragged a stray kitten into the house, its meow muffled by Bibi's small hands. He spent hours nursing it back to health, using a makeshift dropper to feed it milk. It was the first time his mother saw tears well up in his eyes as he whispered, "No one should be alone." Even then, Bibi understood something profound. Loneliness was a pain deeper than any physical wound. By the age of 10, Bibi's curiosity knew no bounds. And then, when his father took a teaching position in Philadelphia, in the year that Bibi turned 14, the family moved across the ocean. Bibi found himself a stranger in a strange land, navigating the complexities of American schools with the same intensity he showed in learning Hebrew grammar. He quickly mastered English, and his classmates marveled at his ability to switch seamlessly between languages, often cracking jokes in Hebrew that left them bewildered. One memorable day, Bibi decided to take a stand against the school bully. A head taller than most of his peers, he approached the tormentor and in perfect English said, "You may scare others, but you're nothing more than a loud frog croaking in a small pond." The bully, confused by the odd insult, backed down. Bibi's classmates erupted into laughter, and for the first time, he felt the thrill of using words as weapons, sharper than any sword. The constant moves and shifting landscapes taught Bibi adaptability. But beneath the layers of bravado and sharp humor, there lay a simmering uncertainty. Would he ever find a place where he truly belonged? It was a question that lingered in his mind, even as he continued to excel in school and prepare for the life his father had subtly mapped out for him. It was a cloudless day in 1967 when Bibi, freshly graduated from high school, stood before his father and declared, "I'm joining the army." Benzion's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of pride. In Israel, military service was a rite of passage, a transformation of boys into men. Bibi's decision was not unexpected, but the intensity with which he pursued it was. After completing his basic training and graduating as a fully fledged member of the Israeli Defense Force, Bibi joined the Sayeret Matkal, the elite commando unit known for its brutal training and dangerous missions. During one exercise, Bibi found himself crawling through thorny underbrush, sweat dripping into his eyes. His commander barked an order to halt, but Bibi, not hearing clearly, continued forward. The next moment, he felt a rough yank, his body dragged to safety, just as a simulated explosive detonated inches from where he'd been. "You always have to listen," the commander growled. "Your stubbornness will get you killed." It was a lesson he took to heart, but Bibi's determination never waned. On missions, he moved with the precision and focus of a man twice his age, his eyes scanning for threats while his mind worked through scenarios at lightning speed. It was during these tense moments that he felt most alive. Adrenaline coursing through his veins, every sense heightened. But war has a way of making even the most confident men doubt themselves. In the heat of a particularly dangerous operation, a comrade fell beside him, a bullet piercing his chest. Bibi froze, an uncharacteristic hesitation that nearly cost another soldier's life. Later, sitting alone in the barracks, he stared at his trembling hands, feeling a surge of guilt and shame. He was no hero. He was just a boy pretending to be a man. Then came the day that shattered his world. July 4th, 1976. His older brother Yoni, the family's golden child, and the one Bibi always looked up to, died leading the raid at Entebbe to rescue hostages. Bibi's world turned black. The grief was overwhelming, suffocating him in its unrelenting grip. For days he couldn't speak, couldn't eat. It was as if a part of him had died with Yoni. His father's stoic silence only deepened the pain. How could they go on when the brightest star of their family had been snuffed out? But over time, slowly, Bibi turned his grief into purpose. He would fight, not just for Israel, but for Yoni's memory. Every speech, every policy he later championed, was infused with his brother's spirit. He was no longer just Benjamin Netanyahu. He was Yoni's brother, the guardian of his legacy. Bibi's entry into diplomacy was almost accidental, driven by his father's relentless encouragement and a desire to escape the shadow of grief that hung over Israel. He found himself in New York, representing Israel's interests at the United Nations. The transition from soldier to diplomat was jarring. In place of bullets, there were endless meetings, soft chairs, and verbose debates that seemed to accomplish nothing. One day he found himself at a swanky party, trying to discuss Middle Eastern security with a group of tipsy senators more interested in their drinks than the plight of Israel. Bibi, ever serious, found it infuriating. In an attempt to bridge the cultural gap, he tried to tell a joke. Something about the unlikely friendship between a rabbi and a camel. The punchline fell flat, leaving an awkward silence. Flushing with embarrassment, Bibi muttered in a low voice, "Well, at least in Israel, the camels get it." The room erupted into laughter. He learned then that sometimes humor could be as effective as a well-placed argument. But there were darker moments too. He felt the constant pressure of being scrutinized by both Israeli and international eyes. Too soft, they said. Too aggressive, they muttered. His every move seemed to disappoint someone. Late at night, he would sit in his small apartment, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, wondering if he would ever be able to balance being both a diplomat and a warrior, both Yoni's brother and his own man. Then, in 1996, Bibi stood on the precipice of victory. The election campaign had been grueling, filled with sleepless nights and heated debates. His opponent, Shimon Peres, represented a hopeful peace process that many had embraced. But Bibi spoke to the fears of those who believed that Israel needed strength above all else. The streets buzzed with anticipation, whispers of loyalty and dissent mingling in the air like the scent of jasmine that filled the warm evenings. As he delivered speeches, Bibi's voice rose and fell like the tide, commanding attention and igniting passion. A strong leader for a strong Israel, he proclaimed, his deep voice resonating through crowded halls. Supporters chanted his name, and in those moments, he felt invincible. Yet, beneath the confidence lay a growing anxiety. Could he live up to the expectations? Could he keep the promise he'd made to Yoni? On election night, the results rolled in slowly, each new percentage point feeling like a heartbeat echoing in a quiet room. Bibi watched the screen, his heart pounding. When the announcement came, he had won by the narrowest of margins. The room erupted in cheers, but in that instant, the weight of responsibility crashed over him like a cold wave. This isn't a victory, he thought. It's the beginning of a struggle. His first days in office were met with excitement, but soon the reality of governing set in. Tensions in the region escalated, and Bibi found himself caught between the desire for peace and the instinct to protect his people. One evening he attended a memorial service for victims of a terrorist attack. As he spoke to the grieving families, he felt their anguish clawing at his heart, and the guilt of every life lost felt like a weight pressing on his chest. They looked to him for answers, but all he had were empty promises and a determination to shield them from further harm. Yet amidst the chaos, Bibi had his moments of levity. He often joked with his aides about the absurdity of politics, recounting his early days in the Knesset. "You know what they say," he would grin. "Politics is just like the kindergarten playground, but with sharper elbows." Laughter would erupt, and for a moment the tensions of the day seemed to melt away. But then came the tide of events that would lead to his undoing. His hardline policies alienated allies and opponents alike. The peace process seemed more elusive than ever, and whispers of discontent grew louder. Behind the scenes, political rivalries festered, and Bibi felt increasingly isolated. One evening, he sat in his office, staring blankly at a wall filled with photographs of his family and political heroes. The silence was deafening, and for the first time, he doubted his choices. In 1999, after just 3 years, he lost the election to Ehud Barak. The defeat hit him like a physical blow. He watched the news coverage, reporters eagerly recounting his fall from grace, and he felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. A cloud of shame enveloped him, and he withdrew from public life, seeking solace in the shadows. Years passed, and Bibi found himself navigating the winding corridors of corporate life far from the political arena. He began to re-establish his footing, but the hunger to return to public service burned within him. Late at night, he would watch the news, his heart racing as he heard Israel's struggles echoing through the screen. With each report, the longing to serve surged back to life. By the time 2009 rolled around, Israel faced new challenges, security threats, and economic instability. The political landscape was shifting, and whispers of Bibi's potential comeback began to circulate. Slowly but surely, he started to build his coalition, rekindling connections and rallying support. It was a tactical dance, one that required all his political acumen and the charm he had honed over the years. Election night came, and Bibi felt the familiar mix of anxiety and anticipation wash over him. As the results poured in, he knew the stakes were high. This time, the margin of victory felt more like a battle fought in the trenches. When his party won decisively, the roar of supporters filled the air, and he stood before them, heart pounding with both exhilaration and trepidation. The past had not forgotten him, and neither had the people. As prime minister once again, Bibi quickly faced the complexities of leadership. International relations were a chess game, and he found himself sitting across from world leaders, navigating the delicate balance between aggression and diplomacy. The adrenaline pulsed through his veins, igniting a fire that had long lain dormant. Yet, amidst the pressures of governance, Bibi, true to his personality, made room for laughter. He often invited his staff for casual Fridays, where they would exchange stories and jokes. Once, after a particularly exhausting week, he arrived in the office wearing a bright Hawaiian shirt, declaring, "If I can't relax today, I'll make sure you can." The room erupted in laughter, showing that even in the world of politics, light-hearted moments could flourish. Bibi's second tenure as prime minister marked a period of both triumph and tension. He found himself navigating a turbulent landscape filled with protests, security threats, and political rivalries that seemed to shift with the wind. Each day presented new challenges, testing his resolve and determination. He became known as the Mr. Security, always prioritizing Israel's safety above all else. But with power came scrutiny. Critics lambasted his policies, claiming he was obstructing peace, while supporters heralded him as a defender of Israel. The political battlefield was fierce, and Bibi found himself at the center of a storm. Every speech, every decision was dissected, and he often felt like a gladiator fighting for his survival in an arena filled with critics. In 2014, during a heated military campaign in Gaza, he stood before the nation, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. His voice trembled slightly as he declared, "We will not compromise the safety of our people." The room was filled with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. The tension was palpable, and Bibi felt the heat of their scrutiny. But as he looked into the eyes of the nation, he remembered Yoni's spirit guiding him, reminding him that leadership required both strength and vulnerability. Through it all, Bibi found humor in the absurdity of the political circus. He would often recount tales of unexpected moments during state visits, like the time he found himself stuck in an elevator with a visiting dignitary. "You'd think I'd be good at squeezing into tight spaces after all those years in the military," he joked, leaving his audience in stitches. Yet as the years wore on, the pressure intensified. Legal battles loomed on the horizon, casting shadows over his achievements. With each passing day, whispers of corruption grew louder, turning friends into foes. The sense of betrayal cut deeper than any wound, and Bibi felt the walls closing in. He sought solace in his family, often finding comfort in shared laughter at home, where the chaos of politics faded for a brief moment. Since Bibi was sworn in as prime minister for a 5th term in 2020, he managed to lead his country through the COVID pandemic, and managed to be elected and sworn in as prime minister for a 6th term. There is no doubt that he is currently facing what is possibly the most difficult challenge yet in his whole life. And with the world divided, who knows how this is going to turn out? Considering what has transpired of late, do you think Netanyahu's strong stance is necessary for Israel's security, or do you think a different approach could yield better results in the long run? Please share your views in the comments, and let's have a discussion. And if you are ever in a mood to sit back and binge on truly mind-blowing stories, you absolutely have to check out the playlist on your screen right now. These stories are all based on real events, so treat yourself to a proper dose of me time and enjoy. Till next time, much love and stay safe.